Walked in there and said, listen, I've committed multiple felonies. Am I going to go to jail?
Well, probably.
Well, then see ya. Bye.
I don't even have to fuck you. Forget the sex part. That's a distraction. My dick can stay in my pants. I'll just start beating the shit out of you. How about that? We walk in the bedroom. I start kicking your ass. No sex. No sex involved. But you cry then.
Here's a little move. When I grab you by your neck and you start annoying me trying to resist, and I just
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the first live stream of 2023. Can you believe it's 2023? I am your host, Permission to Exist, also known as PTE. And tonight we are going to pick back up with our Sick and Dangerous Men series that we actually started last year. And then I took a very, very long pause. So apologies for that pause. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports the channel in any meaningful way, be that Patreon, Cash App, Super Chatting, liking, commenting, and subscribing. And now you guys, after a very long wait, we do finally have channel memberships active on Permission to Exist. Took a lot of thought. I surveyed those who are on the mailing list. If you're not on the mailing list, there's a link in the description box where you can sign up to be on the mailing list. But I did send out a survey to those folks, and they were kind enough to answer that survey, and it actually really helped guide a lot of my decisions around the channel memberships. So you will see a join button on live streams and videos now. You are welcome to join us. There are 2 levels. The first level is just a support level, just to say, thanks, PTE, appreciate everything that you're doing. Here's a little change thrown at you. And then there's the second level, which is going to be the members only section of the channel. There you're going to get member Q&A, live stream after shows, the first of which is going to come tonight after this live stream. Getting to know me a little bit better. And any videos I post there will be ad-free, meaning I'll turn the monetization off, so you don't have to deal with ads when you're in the members only section. I think that's only fair. So that is active now and on. So thank you to everyone who decides to become a channel member. Thank you in advance. I appreciate you all so very much. So welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody. Let's get started and continue on in our series with the Sick and Dangerous Men series. And I think it's very important to talk about why we are doing this. And I have a little reminder here in a moment, but the primary reason we're doing this is not to trash and bash all men everywhere. As I have said many times before, if all men were like this, we would be in a lot of trouble. The whole entire world would be dangerous. And I know it feels like the whole entire world is dangerous. I know it feels like that a lot of times. But I assure you that there are good men out there. However, in recent times, they are being overridden. Well, maybe the better word is overshadowed. In recent times, the good men are being overshadowed by the bad men. And so that's why we have to do this series to raise awareness, in particular for younger women who really don't know and really don't remember a world prior to the internet. Because I think that makes a huge difference. If you were born and the internet was already up and running, pretty much at full force, you won't know a world prior to the internet. So you don't know how people used to be and how they used to act before the internet came into the picture. So I think it's very important, in particular for young women, to be made aware that there are dangerous men out there, sick men out there, and what to look for and what those traits and what those characteristics actually look like out of those particular men. So that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. And I also want to give you another reminder of why we are here and why we are doing this. So, rest in peace to all those victims of senseless and violent crime. And I'm sure some of you have noticed that there's a lot of people, a lot of women that I left off of this particular installment of that video. And what happened was when I was preparing to do the next show last year, every time I would finish that little segment, a new news story would pop up. So then I would go edit it, put it in, and I'm like, okay, we're done with this. And then the very next day, another one would pop up. And it actually became so overwhelming for me that it caused me to pause the whole entire series because I was just blown away. That segment honestly could last about 5 minutes with all the news stories that have taken place regarding violence against women since we actually last spoke, which was last April, was the last time we did this series. And it actually froze me up because I was like, wow, I cannot keep adding stories to this segment. It's going to be 5 minutes long. And how horrible that so many women and children keep experiencing this violent act against them by sometimes strangers, but often by men in their lives. And I think I just saw somewhere in the chat, someone mentioned the Idaho victims. I mean, every day there's a new story coming out regarding this. So that is why we are here. That is the reason we're doing this series, because we must raise awareness. As I've stated early on in the show, you must believe in the boogeyman. I think a lot of how we've been trained in our society is we've been trained to look the other way. We've been trained to pretend that everything's fine, nothing to see here, nothing's wrong, you know? We don't want to believe that there are individuals among us capable of these things. And the reason that we focus on men is because it seems, or at least focusing on men in this series, is that it seems that men by far are more affected by mental illness in terms of acting it out. And that kind of brings us to the topic of tonight's show, The Lost Army. In a previous installment of this series, I think I said this in passing during one of those streams. I said they are the lost army. And what I mean by that is we have a large number of men who are wandering around without guidance, wandering without a purpose, wandering around without a cause. And anytime someone rises up to kind of sort of be their leader, they latch on to that person, elevate them to sainthood, and typically make them very, very, very rich also. Many of you tuned in after this already played, but in the intro, I played some clips from someone known as Andrew Tate, who I'm sure some of you already knew about, and the others of you have heard about him in recent weeks and months, because Andrew has gotten himself into some trouble with the law. And we're actually going to cover all that tonight. We're going to talk about that tonight. But Andrew Tate is their current leader. He is their current father. He is their current drill sergeant, if you will. And this particular army is very, very easy to lead. And we're going to talk about why that is also. We are going to talk about why this particular army has become so easy to lead. So welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you. I want to share with you a quote that came through on one of the last streams that we did for this particular topic. And I know the writing is very small and probably very hard to see, but it was very tough for me to fit it in on one screen. So I am going to read it to you. And this comment was left by a viewer, and I thought it was so profound, and I thought it really captured the point that I'm trying to make with tonight's show. It reads, "I've been still mulling over the chilling question of that emptiness within so many males. I still don't understand why they're like that, but I'm thinking it has come down to a spiritual thing. Something essential is missing in these guys. I've been talking it over with a couple of friends, and we keep coming back to the parable of the sower and the four groups Jesus described. The path and the rocky soil groups are easy enough to identify in real life, and they've always struck me as fundamentally alien somehow, shallow, flimsy, off. I've long since come to the same conclusion about that cult you mentioned. I have a different name for it, and I think it has a different root and intent. But the male element, or pseudo male element, as I believe, is unmistakably the common denominator. The excuses being made, even by the handmaidens, about how monsters are only monsters because society didn't love them enough, are so devastatingly revealing. They imply that these males have no inner core or anchor, that they don't move under their own power and merely function like objects that can only move in any direction under the force of some outside influence. Any entity that can never help anything he does because someone else always made him do it, even through absence, as this fatherless argument claims, is not truly human. They're claiming males are only empty vessels without volition. If that is true of so many males, then what the heck is in the driver's seat? What kind of spirit overpowers and takes over wherever he can? Ultimately, the devil, whether it be through cults, mass hypnosis, brainwashing, direct demonic influence, or even outright possession. The cowardly bully spirit who flees from anyone who resists him, but mercilessly exploits anyone who backs down and gives him ground. From the extent of the current meltdowns and misery we're seeing, these people are slaves of the devil and letting him destroy them to the fullest as he pleases. They either can't or won't resist him, echoing his lies that they're helpless and have no choice, but women or society somehow do. Satan will take over and use them to do his work as far as they will let him. It's coming to a head now. Be careful out there, folks. So that was the comment that was left. Very profound. Thank you to the viewer who actually left that comment. And the whole entire comment is amazing. But there was one specific part that stood out to me that kind of speaks to tonight's topic, the lost army. And that part of this comment was, they imply that these males have no inner core or anchor, that they don't move under their own power and merely function like objects that can only move in any direction under the force of some outside influence. And guys, that is exactly what we're dealing with right now. Somehow, these men have become empty vessels. And the question for me is, are they born empty vessels or do they become empty vessels early on in life? I don't have an answer to that question for you. But it is the reason that men like Andrew Tate and Kevin Samuels and all of these other sick leaders who rise up, typically through the ranks of social media, are able to take such a stronghold on their minds, and they will defend these men to the bitter end. They will swat down any and all evidence to the contrary of their dear leader. And they are loyalists to a fault. They are loyalists to the core. And like I said, they typically make these men very, 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 very rich. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about one of their leaders. And again, if you missed the intro, I think you should go back and watch it. It's a very brief clip, only about 30 seconds, to give you just some insight into who Andrew Tate is. And very similar to other cult leaders, Andrew has a tendency to sometimes weave in factual information in the midst of all the sick content that he puts out. So one thing that he mentioned that went pretty viral was how he moved to Romania because Romania's laws are very, very lax in regard to SA. You have to use your context clues in regard to SA and things like that. He doesn't like that in America, a man can be held accountable for his improper actions against a woman. He basically was saying that in Romania, it's a little bit easier to get away with things like that. SA, R, things like that. It's a little bit easier to get away with them in countries like Romania than it is America. They're very, very, very much against the Me Too movement, which we could have a separate conversation on that altogether. Maybe I'll talk about that in the after show. Join the channel memberships to be a part of that conversation, be a part of the after show after tonight's stream. They're very much against the Me Too movement. They believe it's a way for men to be falsely accused and lose everything at the accusation of a woman versus the actual proof. Different conversation, similar conversation, but kind of different. But they were against it from day one. It's not like it came out and they were kind of cautious about it and then turned against it. The minute it started, they were against it. And when I say things like, occasionally Andrew says true things, for example, he'll speak on censorship and the boot of censorship, and how the narrative is currently being controlled by the powers that be. That's not a lie. That's true. But then he'll turn around and say, if a woman doesn't do what I say, I'll just punch her in her face. You see what I mean? So it's like giving someone cereal and then pouring gasoline in the cereal. So they gave you a good thing. They gave you cereal. But then instead of pouring milk in the bowl, they pour in gasoline and tell you to eat up. That's what they do. And it's incredibly psychologically damaging to someone whose psychology might already be either damaged or absent completely. Absolutely. The chat says the spiritual war is deeper than a lot of people realize. So what they do, and I believe they target these men on purpose, they purposely target men who really don't have a strong sense of self, men who really don't have any guiding principles or any values or any foundation that they stand on their own. All of their guidance and values and foundation comes from other people, outside sources, or whatever the group is doing. So if the group is currently hating women, hating all women, things like that, well, they're going to do that too, because they're part of this army, the lost army. They are lost. They are beyond lost. Some might say irredeemable. That could be debated, but they're so empty inside that the next powerful voice that comes along can take them along with them and have them do pretty much anything. Why do you think most gangs consist of men? Most terrorist organizations consist primarily of men. Yes, they occasionally recruit women. I just saw a story the other day of some lady who got recruited, I think, to ISIS. She went over there. She's an American too. Went over there, joined that group, had one of the group leaders' babies, and now she wants to come back home. And she's trying to see, and she even said she's willing to do jail time if it means coming back to the States. So it's not that women don't get swept up in these things, but when you look at primarily who is it? It's men. So the question becomes, why? Why is that the case? Why has that become the case? But let's take a look at one of their, I would say he's the main leader right now. Now, this article is actually from April of last year, 2022. And it's part of, well, it was going to be part of one of my shows. And I feel like I even brought it up, but I just can't remember. And I didn't have time to go review the shows. But I feel like I mentioned this and then we moved on to something else, because I didn't think anything would come of it. But there has been developments since this. So let's just take a look. Published April 22nd, 2002. This is their current dear leader, Andrew Tate. And it says Romanian police raided the home of prominent pro-Trump online personality Andrew Tate this month as part of a human trafficking investigation, bringing new attention to Tate's ties to leading figures in the American MAGA movement. Before the April 11th raid, Tate was best known as a kickboxer and vocal Trump supporter in the online far right. On social media, Tate portrayed himself as a wealthy, cigar-smoking playboy, prompting one admirer to dub him the king of toxic masculinity. But Tate's treatment of women had an ugly side. In 2016, he was booted off the British version of Big Brother over a video of him hitting a woman with a belt. This March, Britain's Daily Mirror tabloid profiled him and his brother Tristan Tate and their Romania-based business, which used webcam models to trick men into sending the brothers tens of thousands of dollars. In one video on his YouTube channel, Andrew Tate said 40% of the reason he moved to Romania was because Romanian police were less likely to pursue sexual assault allegations. Tate's unsavory activities didn't stop him from building links with the stars of the Trumpian right. In 2019, Tate pawed around Washington, D.C. with prominent online Trump activists and conspiracy theorists. He shared a meal with far-right cable news commentator Jack Posobiec, an InfoWars host Paul Joseph Watson, and appeared multiple times on InfoWars shows. In Trump's Washington hotel, Tate posed for a picture. Okay, now they're getting into the political side of things. So this was the article from last year, and I'll link these for you. I'll link these for you when the show is over so you can go read them yourself. Welcome to the new channel member. I think you're the very first channel member. So welcome. It's so good to have you. Thank you for being here and thank you for joining. Turn up. So this was April of last year. So basically what happened was they raided his house on these allegations. And then it appeared that nothing actually came from that. Okay. Now, fast forward to just a few weeks ago, he has actually been arrested in Romania on these charges. And the crazy thing is, I should just show you that brief intro again. I should just show it to you again for those who missed it. But I cut out a significant portion of that intro. And because it was from the Fresh and Fit podcast, and they're very, very touchy about their content. They'll slap a copyright on you before the video is even finished. So I didn't feel like bothering with them and dealing with them, who I would say are probably second in line to Andrew Tate. So now that he's been arrested, they probably have moved back into the number one spot. But anyway, in that particular video clip, he details how he decided he was going to start this webcam business. And he invited what he called 5 of his girlfriends from all around the world to, I believe it was Romania. And he told them when they all got there, because they didn't know who each other were. They were like, who is this girl? Who's this girl? He was like, you're all my girlfriends. You're going to stay here with me. We're going to make a lot of money. And this is what you're going to be doing. Well, apparently the girls got into a huge fight with each other. 3 of them left and 2 of them stayed. And they were the first 2 cam girls for Andrew Tate and his brother, allegedly. And eventually his business grew to 75 women all around the world making these webcam videos for him, quite a few of them being right there in the country with him. The issue became there were allegations that he wouldn't let them leave. So when they wanted to quit, they didn't want to work for him anymore, that he would either force them to stay by threats or by force or potentially even violence. He claimed that one girl threw up in the apartment. He told her to clean it up. She said that she wasn't going to. So he took her stuff, all of her belongings, and threw them off the balcony. And apparently they were very high up, like they were in a high rise. And he threw all her stuff over the edge of the balcony. And then he took her by her arms. These are his words. Took her by her arms and basically forced her out of the apartment. And she called the police on him a little bit later. Welcome, Brandon. Thank you so much to the new channel member. Good to have you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and I appreciate you joining. We'll see you in the after show. So he forced her out of the apartment. And this is the girl who called the police and caused the Romanian authorities to raid him again. Okay. But the issue is, essentially, from what I'm understanding, the issue is that you cannot hold somebody against their will and force them to do sex work, basically. You can't do that. I guess wherever it is legal, when it's legal, it has to be entirely voluntary. You cannot force them to do it. And it sounds like there was some force involved here. But I don't know that for sure. That's all alleged. Let's take a look at this article. And again, the reason we're looking at Andrew Tate this evening is because this is one of their leaders right now. This is Dear Leader right now. When Kevin Samuels died, this became Dear Leader. And the simple fact that this is the type of man that they look up to, Not a man with a family, a wife, children, a business, a legit above board business, or even a godly man, which I think might be too much to ask these days. None of those things. But a man who basically, even though the women are doing it voluntarily, potentially, is exploiting women to become very, 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 very rich. And the irony of the fact that he's becoming rich from the exact same men who worship him, because it's not women tuning into cam girls. I'm sure there are some women who identify as either lesbian or bisexual who might tune into these cam girls. But if I had to put a percentage, I would say it's probably 95% men or male customers and maybe 5% female customers, maybe. And that's probably being generous. It's probably closer to 98% male and maybe 2% female. But let's take a look at this article and see some of the details and some of the facts surrounding his recent arrest. This came out January 4th, 2023. The arrest of misogynist influencer Andrew Tate explained. The 36-year-old was recently arrested on charges of RAPE and human trafficking in Romania. Says misogynist influencer Andrew Tate, who once said he moved from the UK to Romania because RAPE laws are more lenient there, was arrested by Romanian officials on December 29th on charges of RAPE and human trafficking. The country's Directorate for Investigating Organized Crime and Terrorism, or DICOT, said that Tate and his brother Tristan are suspected of having recruited victims for a criminal online PORN scam. And y'all know the reason I'm editing the words is because the algorithm, YouTube, and censorship, okay? In a translated press release, officials said that the Tates recruited victims by making them believe they were interested in a genuine relationship, then transported them to live in houses where they were under constant surveillance and forced to act in PORN videos under threats of violence. The videos would then be sold online. Tate has proudly admitted to some version of this already. The self-proclaimed king of toxic masculinity told the Daily Mirror that he and his brother once operated a total scam in which 75 women were paid to talk to men for $4 per minute, and where the Tates would pocket most of the money. This kind of behavior is central to Tate's personal brand, that of the straight-talking hustler who films himself alongside exotic sports cars and scantily clad models, wearing bathrobes and smoking cigars, implying that by following his advice, you too could live such a lifestyle. And I left out a very important piece of that the story that I told you earlier. As he was throwing this girl out of the apartment, she said, "Well, give me the money that you owe me." He owed her like $1,000 for her work, and he refused to pay her. So that's probably, to be honest, probably why she called the police on him, among other things. But he refused to give her money. So to me, that would be the definition of exploitation. But keep in mind, he's in another country. He's not in the United States of America. He's in Romania. So in Romania, apparently the laws are more lax, but not so lax that he didn't get arrested. But, you know, he uses this woman for monetary gain. Then she pukes in his apartment. She refused to clean it up, which who knows the circumstances of that or if it's true or what. And then when she refused, he threw her out, threw her stuff over the balcony. These are his words. He threw her stuff up over the balcony, put her out of the apartment, and then refused to pay her money. This is who they're looking up to, okay? Though Tate has been courting fame for years, his videos began gaining mainstream traction last year when clips of his angry diatribes and shady entrepreneurial advice regularly went viral on TikTok. Much of the discourse surrounding him relates to panic over the well-being of boys and young men. During that time, middle and high school teachers reported noticing an uptick in sexual harassment and sexist hate speech in their classrooms by their male students. In response, all the major social media platforms banned his accounts. Although under Elon Musk's ownership, Twitter reinstated his account in November. It had been removed since 2017 when Tate tweeted in the aftermath of the Harvey Weinstein allegations, "If you put yourself in a position to be RAPED, you must bear some responsibility." So pausing there, there's a couple things I want to comment on this particular thing. Welcome, Ego Alter. Welcome. New channel member. Good to have you. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the after show. Couple things I want to point out here. I think Andrew Tate's, one of his biggest bases are young men. Men aged like 14 to 19 make up a huge chunk of his fan base. And if these reports are true, which I believe they are, it's like, it feels like all the progress we've tried to make towards civility, not just between men and women, but civility between people in general, has been undone or is being actively undone. And teaching young boys how to hate at an early age, teaching them how to hate women specifically at an early age. Welcome, John Jay. Thank you to the new member. Good to have you. See you in the after show. Teaching young men how to hate and not how to think things through logically, not how to think things through in a way that leads to positive outcomes for them and whoever it is that they're dealing with. But I see it, and I'll tell you where I see it. I told y'all I go to some haunts on the internet, some places I wouldn't recommend y'all go visit because they're just, they really are cesspools. I'm not going to lie. But part of the reason that I visit these websites is because, number one, they're kind of up on current events, even though they post a lot of trash content that really nobody should be seeing. They also post current events. So that's one reason. But the main reason I visit these websites is because their comment sections kind of tell me where everyone is mentally, where the mentality is with people in general. And I cannot tell you how it's kind of startling and very unnerving to see how cold many people in society have grown in regard to certain issues. So if they post a video of a man, and really, honestly, this website should be taken down, to be honest with you, but then that's censorship. And, anyway, they'll post a video and they'll title it something like, "Man catches his girlfriend cheating, so he does this." And it'll be like him, like punching her in the face, like, oh, the content is horrible, like it's awful. And underneath the video, you'll have a couple of guys who'll be like, "Guys, it's not even worth it. Just leave her. You know what I mean? Move out, whatever, da, da, da." But the majority of the men will be like, "Serves her right. That's what she gets. All these cheating whores." And you can tell some of them are kind of young. Some of them are probably in their 20s, some are in their 30s, some are in their 40s, who knows? But teaching them, they all believe that all women cheat. They have this massive group understanding or belief that all women cheat. They're not worth committing to. But then these are the same men who on a different post will complain that women aren't about family and children anymore. They'll complain that the family has fallen apart, that nobody wants to be married anymore. Nobody wants house and home and family. But how can you have house and home and family if you believe all women cheat? Like, anyway, it's very highly contradictory. We're actually going to do a separate installment of this series called Liberal Lifestyle, Conservative Expectations. And a lot of them are confused in that way. They have conservative, politically conservative beliefs, and expectations, but they live a very liberal lifestyle. We'll get into that another day. Another day. Um, but it's starting to infect the youngest men and boys in our society. And when they see someone like Andrew Tate, think about when you were a young person and think about who the celebrities were and think about how much you may have admired those people and admired what they've accomplished and admired what they've acquired in their life, the different success that they've had. In your mind, in the young mind, in a way, they can almost do no wrong, in a way. So it's going to be very, very hard for you to view them negatively when you admire them so much. So when they look at Andrew Tate, what they're seeing is he's got all these women, all these chicks from all over the world. They'll do anything for him. He's got all these cars. He's super rich. He's a kickboxer, so super masculine, you know. So they're going to listen to him when he says things like, if you put yourself in a position to be RAPED, you must bear some responsibility. Instead of teaching young men and boys who could end up in jail over RAPINGing somebody, teaching them, hey, even if a woman has put herself in an incredibly vulnerable position, just walk away, my guy. Walk away, bro. It's not worth it. Leave the room, leave the house, leave the party, just leave. He doesn't even teach them that if a woman is drunk, she cannot consent. Drunk or under the influence, she cannot consent. She might be all over you. She might be saying yes, 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 but she's drunk and under the influence. Did she get herself drunk? Yeah, probably. Did she take whatever drugs to get herself under the influence? Yeah, probably. She did all of that voluntarily. That does not equal consent. He doesn't teach them that. He's telling them, hey, if she puts herself in a position for that to happen to her, she's got to bear some responsibility for that. Instead of teaching him who holds the ultimate responsibility, though. Who has the most control in that situation? Because if she's put herself in that position, she can only be RAPED if you do that to her. So you being in the power position have the chance to walk away. He doesn't teach them that, though. He's basically saying if she gets RAPED, it's her fault. As a matter of fact, there is a story going viral on Twitter. At least it was going viral, and I think it's yet since died down. This girl publicly outed her RAPIST. And basically what happened was she went to a party. She was invited by a guy that she knew. It was a New Year's party. And she got really, really drunk. And she wanted to go lay down somewhere. So the guy that she knew told her, go upstairs and you can sleep in this particular bed. So that's what she did. When she woke up, some guy that she didn't know was on top of her, RAPINGing her. And she even said to him, you know you're an RAPIST, right? And he said, you were in my bed. That was his response to her. You were in my bed. So basically, he felt entitled to take advantage of this woman because she was upstairs in his bed. And Andrew Tate would say, well, she shouldn't have gone to the party. She shouldn't have got drunk, and she shouldn't have climbed into a strange man's bed. But I don't know if you've ever been drunk before, but sometimes when you're drunk, you'll lay down wherever is available to lay down, sometimes including the floor. You'll lay down on the floor if that's the closest nearest thing. But I guess she didn't want to be in the midst of the party, passed out drunk. So her so-called friend told her to go upstairs and sleep in this particular bed. And the reason that she went on Twitter is because once she woke up and she came to terms with what was happening and what had happened to her, yes, she went and she did an RAPE kit. So she went immediately did that. She went to the hospital. They put her on all kinds of medications and antibiotics to try to fight off any STDs he might have given her. So she followed all the steps because, they're big on that. Well, did she report it to the police? Yes, she did. She did a kit. She did all of those things. But her friend, her so-called friend, would not give up the identity of the guy that did this to her. So she had to go do her own investigation and basically scrolled through her friend's Instagram until she found a picture of the guy who did it to her. And then she blasted him all over social media. And of course, as usual, people were swooping in to defend this man, swooping in to defend him and defend his actions. And it's a whole big messy situation, super messy. But I bring it up to say that would be a perfect example of what Andrew Tate is talking about. He would say she put herself in that position, therefore she bears some responsibility and she earned it. Versus if you walk into your room and there's a strange, drunk woman in your bed, you should probably either turn around and walk away, close the door and walk off. Or if you're just kind of offended that she's in your bed, wake her up and say, hey, you gotta go downstairs or something. Hey, go sleep on the couch. Hey, would you like me to call you an Uber to get you home? This is my room. Like because I could get that. Like if you come into your room, somebody's all up in your bed and you don't want them there. Like, hey, do you want me to get you an Uber to get you home? Or, hey, you got to go downstairs to the couch. This is my room. You know what I mean? But instead, he was almost like, oh, a gift from the gods. Wonderful. And he took advantage of this girl, allegedly, according to her side of the story. Andrew Tate would say he was fully within his rights, basically. So that would be a perfect example. And then let's move on. Let's see. How long is this article? Let's see what else this article is offering. Where were we? Here we go. The brazenness of his cruelty and expensive but trashy aesthetic has made Tate the face of several unfortunate stereotypes in contemporary internet culture. The anti-feminist capitalizing on the Me Too backlash, the angry dude with a podcast mic, and the guy shilling for scammy pyramid scheme adjacent businesses. Okay, so now they're kind of getting into their own opinion a little bit. Yeah, okay. So I'll link this for you if you want to read the whole article. I just kind of wanted to give you some of the background on why he was arrested. I didn't realize he had been accused of RAPE. I didn't realize that. So that just kind of adds to the layers on this particular nasty little lasagna that we're dealing with here. Okay. So there's that. And this is who we're dealing with in terms of the leaders of the Lost Army. If you will recall, before he passed away, we had done a show on Kevin Samuels where he took a call from a single mother who they hate, by the way. And they hate single mothers and they hate the concept of single mothers. And he took a call from her and he was basically trying to get her to understand that he would come first in that relationship and that she should not be putting her children first. She should be putting the man first, and that a step parent situation can never work out because they're not his children and he'll never see them that way. And he then proposed a hypothetical scenario to this woman where he said, what if 10 years from now, your daughter comes to you and says, oh, Kevin was looking at me coming out of the shower. And the daughter was 15 years old at the time. So I'm assuming, it's in the future and the daughter's 25 and just telling the mother, I can't remember all the circumstances. And the woman was kind of taken aback and she was like, oh, I'd have to leave. We'd have to go. The relationship would be over. And he was basically like, see, that's what I'm talking about. He was like, why would you believe her and not me? And the woman's response was essentially, because that's my child. That's my daughter. And I have to protect my child. And he was like, no. He was like, see, you're so quick to protect your children that you would believe your child over me without even, like the way he set it up. It's very twisted. It's still on my channel. You can go watch it if you want to. There's a short version and there's a long version of that particular scenario. But essentially, what he was doing was trying to groom not only the woman on the phone, but he was trying to groom women everywhere to not take the side of their children when they make an allegation against the man of the house. But he was also kind of trying to groom the men who watch him into believing and understanding that, hey, that's not your kid. So if you want to look at her coming out the shower, hey, it's not your daughter. And I'm working on the minds of the women to not believe their daughters and sons when they come to them with allegations. Welcome, Cocoa Waters. Thank you for joining the channel. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the after show. It was a mass grooming exercise. It's grooming for all. He was grooming single mothers everywhere. He was grooming women everywhere. He was also grooming the young men who watch him, because here's what happens after these highly susceptible individuals take in content like that. They like to go exercise it on people, and they like to go practice with people. And what that practice looks like is, let's say they're at a house party or something, or not even that. Let's just say they're like just talking to a girl on the phone or something. They'll set up the same scenario to test that woman's mentality regarding the issue. So picture two 20-year-old guy and a 20-year-old girl. And this 20-year-old guy follows Kevin Samuels or Andrew Tate even. And he'll be like, okay, I got a scenario for you. And she's like, what? She's like, so let's say you and I, like, we go together, we're together or whatever, but you got kids. And one day your daughter comes to you and says, oh, he was looking at me get dressed. What you gonna do? And she'll be like, what? Like any woman worth her salt at any age should be horrified by the question, because it's a very unusual thing to bring up, because it's kind of like, why is your mind even there? But if she obliges him and chooses to entertain the question, she'll be like, if she has good sense, she'll be like, now some women are more violent than others. She might be like, oh, me and him would have to fight. She might even say, oh, I'd kill him. But that's the more violent of us. Some of us are not quite as violent. So she might be like, oh, no, the relationship would be over. It would have to end. And what this young man who's being influenced by Kevin and Andrew and all the rest of them would say back to her is, well, see there. That's why we can't be in relationships with women with kids, because see, you would just take your daughter's side. Like, it's hard for me to explain what I'm trying to say. They start to test these theories on the women that they meet, because they want to see where her mind is. Because what they're looking for, who they're looking for, is a woman who would be like, oh, well, she probably fast anyway, so I probably wouldn't believe her, because, young girls be fast and young girls be trying to take your man and stuff. So I probably wouldn't believe her anyway. That's what he's looking for. That's the correct answer to men like these. That is the correct answer. You believe me first. You don't believe your child first. You believe me, not your kid, not the child that you grew in your womb, gave birth to, nursed, and raised up. You don't believe that person. You believe me, the newbie. Believe me. So the answer they're looking for is, oh, well, children lie. Children lie all the time. Kids just be making stuff up. You know what I'm saying? It was probably in her imagination. That's the answer they're looking for. They're not looking for resistance. Do you understand? So they're actually trying to see where this woman's mind is at. And if he comes across a woman who's like, oh, kids be lying, especially little girls be lying all the time. Bingo, got one. And he's going to take her on the ride of her life. He's going to take her on the ride of her life because he recognizes that she doesn't have enough sense to protect herself or her children. Those of you who have enough sense to protect yourself and or your children, they don't like you and they're going to fight with you. So let's propose it the other way. Let's say she's like, oh no, that relationship will be over. And I might call the police on him. He'd be like, see, y'all always trying to put men in prison. You always trying to put a man in prison. Just because your kid came to you and made an allegation, what, you're not even going to investigate it? You're not even going to ask questions? Which obviously she probably would. We're assuming we're at the tail end of this thing. But now he's trying to gaslight and guilt trip her into the decision that she would make. See, that's why we don't like single mothers. That's why we don't date single mothers, because all it takes is for the kid to come make one accusation and you want to blow the whole relationship up. Trying to make her feel guilty for that reaction. But that's pretty left field. Like if your kid comes to you and says something like that, that's worthy of a response. It's not worthy to be dismissed. And I've heard so many stories of children who were the victims of childhood SA or childhood RAPE, be that at the hands of a step parent or the biological parent, who went to their mother and told them, and the mother dismissed it. The mother did not believe the child. The mother took the side of the husband or the stepdad or whoever, the boyfriend, took their side over their child's side. I've heard it happens all the time. All the time. So you would actually think it would be the other way around, that the woman would walk away and leave more often, but more often than not, it actually happens in reverse. And that's exactly what these men want. I was watching a true crime show. Yeah, these sickos are getting bolder and bolder. Chat says these sickos are just getting bolder and bolder. They really are. And they're being emboldened by men like Andrew Tate, leading the Lost Army. But I was watching a true crime show, and I cannot remember whose channel it was or the names of the people involved, but some of you might be familiar with the story. There was a mom, she had a boyfriend, and she also had, I think, 2 teenage daughters. And one of the teenage daughters went missing, and no one could find her. So they put up signs and posters, and everyone was looking for her, and the whole town was trying to find this girl. And long story short, I think they found her no longer alive in the basement of the home, something like that. And she, I'm not going to describe how they found her because that might be too much for the algorithm. But it was made to appear like it was self-inflicted. I'll put it like that. Her body was staged in such a way that it appeared to be self-inflicted. And at first, that's what the police went with. They said, oh, okay, this was a troubled young teenager who made this decision to no longer be here on the planet. Well, through some investigation, and they found this girl's journal at school. So she kept a journal and she kept it at school. And in this journal, the young lady who lost her life had detailed what the mother's boyfriend had been doing to her, and had detailed that she told her mom about it and that her mother didn't believe her. And I believe she even reported it in another way, and I just can't remember what way that was, but it all got dismissed basically. And then I think he actually finally got her pregnant. And ultimately the police, after they arrested him, they believed that that's why he took her life, because she got pregnant. And basically it would have been discovered and would have been found out what he had been doing to this girl if she had given birth to this baby. So that's why they think he took action. But the twist on the story is they believe the mom helped cover it up, because she was so devoted and so in love with this man that she didn't want to lose him. So they believe the mother helped actually cover up the whole entire thing. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think either one of them have actually, I take back the arrest part. I don't think either one of them have been arrested, tried, or convicted yet, because I think the police are still building their case. Y'all forgive me. It's been a while since I watched that one, but I do remember those details. And the reason is because the boyfriend and the mother have been getting threats from the local community, unaliving threats, because they're so pissed at what happened to this girl that they've been making threats on this woman and her boyfriend. And the remaining daughter, the surviving daughter, has been going on social media saying, guys, please calm down. Please don't do that. Let the police do their job. If you do something, you're going to compromise the investigation. Please let the police do their job. But the community is not having it. The community is trying to do some vigilante justice to these two, because it's so obvious. But it's a very tragic and sad example of the exact thing that Kevin Samuels was advocating for. Don't believe your children when they tell you things. Stick up for the man. Defend the man at all costs. Take his side and cover for him at all costs. And that is the appropriate way to be a woman. That is the appropriate way to be a partner. And men, you can pretty much do whatever you want to, because she's going to cover it up for you. She's going to take your side. She's going to have your back. We're training the women to have your back. We're training them to doubt the accusations of their children. And that seems to be like when they say that these spaces for the lost army are to help men be better men and help them get some pride and some self-confidence and self-respect. That might be like 10 or maybe 20% of the content that they're offering. The majority of the content that they're teaching the lost army is how to be callous, cold, empty, criminal, psychopathic narcissists. That's what they're teaching them. That's who they're training them to be. And that is why I actively use the word army, not to speak on the actual army, the standing army, United States Army, not to speak on that army. What I'm saying is they're training them to be killers in a way. They're training them how to take out enemy targets and not really feel too much about it. And again, I'm not trying to diss the members of the military. I'm really not. I'm really, really not. I promise you I'm not. What I'm trying to do is draw the comparison. They're training them to use these weapons against the perceived enemy. And in that case, in this case, the enemy is women. They're training them how to not have emotions about it. Like, didn't Prince Harry just come out in some memoir and say he took out 25 Taliban members, and people were really, really upset with him for speaking on that? I didn't look into it. I really have no interest in the royal family. No offense to any people who love the royal families. I don't it really doesn't register on my radar anywhere. And maybe it should. Maybe I should pay more attention. So I only follow it because it pops up in my news feed quite frequently here and there. But I feel like he just, either in a book or in an interview, he mentioned how he removed the lives of 25 Taliban members. So you see what I mean? That's what I mean when I say the lost army. They're being trained to kill. Because you can't have an army and do so without emotion. Because you can't have an army that has a whole lot of empathy and has a whole lot of emotionality, because then they wouldn't be able to take out the enemy targets. They would feel bad about it. And I'm sure some army and military members do feel bad about it. I think that's probably why a lot of them who've been to war and been to combat and had to take out enemy soldiers come back with all kinds of mental disturbances, because it should disturb you. And I think that's why a lot of them come back disturbed, because it's disturbing. But this particular army, the lost army, they're training them to have no feelings about it whatsoever. Training them that, marriage and family is the goal, but sleep with as many women as possible, because after all, they're whores. Cheating, lying whores who don't deserve a husband. So look for a wife, but while you're looking for a wife, take out as many enemy targets as you possibly can, because they're whores and they deserve it, right? That's what they're being trained to do. Being trained to capitalize on opportunities. Oh, if she's drunk, just laying there, go for it, bro, because she shouldn't be drunk and she shouldn't be anywhere but home. If she was home, this wouldn't have happened to her, right? So, that's green light for you, bro. That's what they're teaching these men. And actually, I'm going to play the clip really quick from the intro because I want y'all to see. For those of you who missed it, I'm not going to play the whole intro, but I just want you to see really quick just some of the things that Andrew preaches.
Walked in there and said, listen, I've committed multiple felonies. Am I going to go to jail?
Well, probably.
Well, then see ya. Bye.
I don't even have to fuck you. Forget the sex part. That's a distraction. My dick can stay in my pants. I'll just start beating the shit out of you. How about that? We walk in the bedroom. I start kicking your ass. No sex. No sex involved. But you cry then.
Here's a little move. When I grab you by your neck and you start annoying me trying to resist, and I just...
Okay. So when she starts getting on your nerves, when she starts annoying you, you just grab her by her neck and then punch her in her face. That's what he's teaching them. Or trying to make her cry. So what I was able to gather from the other clip is that perhaps she refused to cry in front of him. So he was basically saying that he doesn't even have to have sex with her. He'll just grab her around her neck and, you know what I mean? Punch her in her face. Bet you cry then. You see? And another part of that clip that I actually edited out, he mentioned how the girls are not allowed to leave. He said they're not allowed to. He's like, my girls don't go out. They're not allowed out. This is what he's teaching these young men. On top of, hey, be successful and build your wealth and get money and, become a hustler and this and that and the other. Oh, and if she gives you trouble, just grab her around her neck and punch her in the face. Bet you cry then. This is what's being taught. Okay? So I want to get into briefly why and how this keeps happening and why it seems to attract a certain type of male. So I found this article a long time ago, and we're going to take a look at it together. I don't know that we'll read the whole thing together, but we will take a look at it here and talk a little bit about how this is happening and why it's happening. Now, I got in a lot of trouble on my most recent live stream. It upset a lot of people, and I think it's because people misunderstood what I was trying to say. So I'm not going to get into it here because I don't want to upset y'all again. I really don't. But I think they misunderstood what I was actually trying to say because I was trying to pinpoint why these movements attract certain types of men. And I identified a cause in that live stream, but it got lost in just the general upset with me over that live stream. So let's take a look at this though, and let's look at it from another angle. It says, spitting out the red pill. Former misogynists reveal how they were radicalized online. Subscribers of Reddit's most notoriously sexist subreddit explain what happens when you change your mind. Let me see how long this thing is first. See how far we're going to go with it. Oh, it's lengthy. We'll read just a little bit of it and then I'll link the rest for you because I think it's going to take them some time to get to the point. It says, Zhao describes swallowing the red pill as a feeling greater than winning the lottery. Aged 17 and a self-described late bloomer virgin, he was growing apprehensive about going to college when he stumbled across online men's rights forums that seemed to hold all the answers. I believed in it so much the now 24-year-old tells me via Skype from his home in Portugal. It was such a fantastic thing to me. Back then, I used to say that I was so happy about finding out about the red pill and pickup artists that I would rather be with them than win the lottery. I don't know why I believed so deeply because it really makes no sense. Though Zhao experienced 2 happy years with fellow red pillars, his opinions have now drastically changed. During the course of our half-hour conversation, he uses one word exactly 20 times, cult. The red pill is a philosophy, and reddit.com/r/the red pill is its home. The nearly 200,000 subscriber strong subreddit describes itself as a place for the discussion of sexual strategy in a culture increasingly lacking a positive identity for men. In itself, perhaps it doesn't sound too bad. In practice, to swallow the red pill is to accept the uncomfortable truth about reality. The phrase comes from 1999's hit film The Matrix, in which the protagonist Neo must choose between the red pill, which would allow him to escape the Matrix but see the real, darker world, and the blue pill, which is continued existence in his comfortable but ultimately fake life. In r/the red pill's instance, the dark truths that the subreddit subscribers have swallowed are these. Feminism is toxic, sexism is fake, men have it harder than women, and everything the media teaches about relationships is a lie. In reality, the argument goes, women don't want soft-centered men and chocolates. They want to be dominated, controlled, and manipulated. The most extreme red pillars even believe that women want to be raped. Rejection is not rejection, reads an extract from the subreddit's most popular post. When a woman insults you, belittles you, mocks you, or says something provocative to get a reaction, these are all examples of active tests. By following the subreddit's advice, its subscribers are promised a life of successful sexual encounters. If they ignore the red pill, they will undoubtedly be rejected, cheated on, and dumped. They have theories that are not easy to prove or disprove. They are based on beliefs like all women cheat, they like cheating, and all women are not loyal. There's this whole conspiracy thing where women are against you. They are this imagined enemy, as well as there's a whole conspiracy that society is against men, that society is anti-male, so to speak, that liberals are messing up society, and that feminism is messing up society too. I believed everything, and if you didn't believe everything, if you go on Red Pill Reddit and you disagree with someone, they either delete your comments or they try to make fun of you and shame you. You can't criticize anything because people will quickly try to diminish you. So I really believed every little thing. So before we even go on, man, there's so much in this to pick apart. There's so much to unpack here. So much to unpack. Oh, man. This might need to, you know what? I might unpack this in the after show, perhaps. But I'll say this. The one thing, there's a couple things that stood out to me from this article. One, the lack of a positive identity for young men in the society. I kind of agree with that, but I also kind of feel like it's less about an identity to adopt and more about you realizing that you are the person who gives you your identity. Your identity is not built from the outside, it's built from the inside. And to me, I feel like that's what's missing. It's like they do not feel free to be the person that they want to be. They have to be the person that groups like these tell them they have to be, or else they get made fun of, mocked, belittled, degraded. And I find it so interesting that they feel like society is against men. But if you really look at who it is that's against them, it's other men. So remember down here where he says that if you go in and you try to disagree with them, they're either going to just delete your comments because you're not allowed to have a differing opinion. They're either going to delete your comments or make fun of you and shame you. You're not allowed to criticize them because they will quickly try to diminish you, just like a narcissist would. So this is not a place where you can go have a healthy debate. For example, you can't be in the red pill communities and say, well, guys, my girlfriend's been real good to me. She's never cheated on me. They're either going to delete your comment or they're going to say, oh, yes, she has, that whore. Oh, she's cheated on you. You just don't know it. Oh, trust me, she's talking to a Chad on the side. As a matter of fact, I came across a video the other day, and this guy was telling his audience, he's a real psychopath too, was telling his audience that if a woman's phone never rings around you, she's definitely cheating on you. He's like, every time y'all are together, if you never hear her notifications go off, that's because she's hiding all the notifications she's getting from other men. And I really couldn't believe it. I thought it was stunning because y'all, my ringer is basically never on, ever. And the reason is because my ringer and my ring, sorry, my little cat's making noise. I find it annoying. I don't like to be like my phone chiming every couple seconds for every notification and this and that. And there's a text and there's a phone call and, Instagram to send a notification and here, like, it drives me nuts. So my ringer is always off. The only time I'll turn my ringer on is if, for example, I just ordered some DoorDash and my DoorDashers have trouble finding my house sometimes. And I don't want to miss their notification saying, hey, I'm looking for your house. I can't find it, can't see it. So I'll turn it on when I know someone's delivering something. Or like if I have a phone screening for a job interview or something, and I know that they're going to call like at 1:30 or something, then I'll turn my ringer on because I'm expecting a phone call, a very important one that I don't want to miss. Other than that, my ringtone stays off. So what this man has just done is set me up, for any man who would actually believe him, set me up to have suspicion cast on me because every time I'm with her, her phone never goes off. So that must mean that she's got a million men hitting her up and she just doesn't want me to know that all these men are texting her, calling her and DMing her when I'm around her. And that's why she sits around with her ringtone off. Not, she just doesn't want to be bothered by her phone. Nope, it has to be other men. You see? So this is just one of the beliefs that they push out on this population of men. And I'm incredibly reminded of, I would say, probably one of the most defining relationships in my life, which was my college boyfriend, because he was on this stuff before it even became a thing. I think it was just starting to take root when he and I dated. And I'll never forget, he used to say things like I'd be like, hey, can we go to dinner? Let's go out to dinner. He'd be like, oh, you women, you just want to be catered to and spoiled. And I'd be like, what? What are you talking about? I just want to go out to dinner with you. Let's go to dinner. Like, that's normal to me. Like, I grew up with myself, my mom and dad. We would just pick up and go out to dinner every now and then. It was a normal thing. So to me, that's how you like bond with people and get to know them and eat good food together. It was normal to me, but he saw that as me trying to be catered to as a woman. And I knew he wasn't right in the head then, but I didn't have quite the foundation yet to truly identify him as one of these sick human beings. But I should have known then. The first time he said, oh, you women just want to be catered to and spoiled, I should have dumped him then. I should have dumped him immediately after he made that comment, because that was a major red flag that this boy is off and he's headed down a real psychopathic path, which he was, But anyway, maybe I'll talk more about that in the after show. But that's how it infects them. He always assumed that I was cheating on him. I actually never did. I never cheated on him, not one time. But he was cheating on me. How about that? How you like those apples? So he was actively accusing me of something that he was actually doing, and I found proof. Proof. So, yeah, long story. But anyway, that's how it affects them. And it basically causes them, I believe, to lose very, very healthy relationships with women, women who sincerely loved them or liked them at least. It causes them to damage and destroy relationships that would have worked out due to their suspicions, their paranoia, their insecurity, and they project all that onto the woman. And any woman who has a healthy mind is going to bail out of there and be like, oh no, this one is not right. Something's wrong with him. Let me get out of this relationship before it gets too deep or before I get pregnant by this nut. Because then I have to deal with him and all his psychosis, and we have a child together. So let me get out of this relationship before any of that happens. And thankfully, I was able to get out before anything like that happened. Okay? Let me read this one more part, and then we're going to look at one more article and wrap the show. It says, beliefs such as all women are evil and all women cheat are what are known as conspiracy stereotypes. Like traditional conspiracy theories, they often rely on cherry-picked evidence. The red pill in particular exploits evolutionary psychology to argue that women are wired to want men with a strong frame. Much of the subreddit's misogyny is justified by one of their favorite acronyms, AWALT. All women are like that. The movement's use of evolutionary psychology convinced my rational mind that everything I read was a scientific fact suppressed by feminists. I began to see male victimhood throughout society. It fed the confirmation biases that society was built around men catering to women in return for sex. They are so sex obsessed, y'all. Mike Wood, a lecturer at the University of Winchester and an expert on the psychology behind conspiracy theories, explains that people who believe in conspiracy stereotypes, such as AWALT, tend to have what is known as a Manichean worldview. Manichean. It says they feel the world is divided into absolute good and absolute evil. And the people behind the conspiracies are, of course, the absolute evil ones. So you see how their thinking is very black and white? How they cannot think with nuance? How difficult it is for them to think in a nuanced way. You see that? Oh, interesting. It says psychologists have a concept, entitativity, entitativity, which describes the extent to which a group of people are perceived as a single entity. If you think that a group is entative, it's like a swarm of bees or ants. They're not just a collection of individuals, they're actually that single organism that moves with a singular purpose. Another way I've heard people put this is a monolith. I think that's probably likely to be true for groups like the Red Pill that look at women and just see a flock of harpies. And to me, with all due respect, anyone who thinks that all things are exactly the same and there's no difference between them, to me, that shows a lack of intelligence as well. That shows a lack of intelligence. That's why I can't get behind a lot of the, like when we have discussions on race, I actively acknowledge that we got some racial problems in this country. And there's a lot of things from the past that have not been fixed. But I'd be hard pressed to say all white people. And then from the reverse, when white people tend to be racist, they make the same logical fallacy. They apply it to all Black people. All Black people are like this. All white people are like this. It's the same thing. All women are like this. All men are like this. very few things in life are all. Very, very few things in life are completely similar in that way. So when you can't differentiate and you can't tell the difference between two things, to me, that shows a bit of a lack of intelligence. I'm sorry, it does. Because, like I've said before on the channel, it's like your mind can't bend that corner. Your mind doesn't know how to take that detour and bend the corner and consider other options and consider nuances, consider different circumstances regarding a thing. It's easier to just put it all in one bucket and apply the same concept to it. It's 10 times easier and also very intellectually lazy. All right. So, and I think here's a good example of that. A lot of us have been through bad relationships, but we don't then subscribe those behaviors. So I date men. I've been through bad relationships, but I don't believe all men are like my exes. I think I just have to find the men that are not like my exes. Now, that's been hard to find, but I have to believe it's out there, or else the world becomes a very scary place. So I do believe men who don't operate like my exes did exist. I'm not going to subscribe those behaviors to all men. Now, if you start exhibiting the same characteristics and traits, all I'm going to say is you're like my ex, but not that you're like all men. You see? But they can't do that with women. They go this particular group of men cannot do that with women. They go through one bad breakup and then assume every woman on earth is just like his ex. It's pretty fascinating. It's like if we didn't know better, we would almost want to blame that one girl who did this to his mind. Like, girl, why did you do that? Because now he thinks every woman on planet Earth is just like you. But it's really not her fault that he has the inability to think critically about human beings and different human structures. Like, for example, one thing they get hung up on is the whole fatherless home thing, single mothers, fatherless homes. And the basic assumption that they're making is if a father is in the home, the child will turn out better. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, because it assumes that the simple presence of a male will have positive outcomes and positive benefits, which means it assumes that all men are good. And we just simply know that that's not true. Just like all women aren't good, all men aren't good either. So, and here's something else that's very interesting. They never discuss motherless homes, which I think would be a natural next step in the conversation. So we talk about fatherless homes. Why don't we ever talk about motherless homes? Do you think that would have an impact at all? And I believe the answer to that question coming from them would be no. It wouldn't matter whether or not mom was there, because mom clearly has no impact on how the child ends up. It's all about the dad. So that's just an example of that streamlined, black and white, yes or no thinking. The inability to see or understand or process nuance. Oh, it's so deep. It's so deep. Let's move on. And then I'm going to go ahead and let me just do something really quick on this other side. Welcome to everyone. It's good to see you guys in this new year. I have one more thing to share with you. And then we are going to wrap up and I'm going to go into the after show that will be available for channel members only. So do join. You have to join the level 2 to access the after show. And I'm just going to go make it live now. So when we hang up, we can just go right over in there. But I do have one more article I want to share with you, because ultimately a lot of what I'm trying to do, y'all, is I'm trying to get to the root cause of the problem. I'm trying to figure out what's happening, why it's happening, and what we can do to fix it or solve it. My objective is not to simply shame and blame and make you feel bad. My objective is to say, what can we do to fix this issue? Because if we don't, it's only going to get worse. And even though I don't have daughters to protect, I'm still a daughter. I'm still a woman in this world, in this society. And if the young men are being corrupted at this level, what awaits for me as I grow older? What awaits for your daughters and granddaughters and sisters and nieces? What awaits for them? And if you really think about it, what becomes of other young men who don't think this way and they come across someone who's deep into these ideologies? Do you think they're going to treat that young man with respect, or do you think they're going to harass and bully him until he either beats them or joins them? Like, I was reading something the other day about the type of hazing that goes on in the actual army. Now, on paper, it's not allowed and you can get in a lot of trouble for it, but it still happens behind closed doors. It still happens. The brutality. It's like, how can we teach men not to be so brutal? And see, when we say that, a lot of them hear, oh, you're talking about toxic masculinity. Oh, you just don't want me to be a man. You just don't want me to be strong. And it's like, no, we just don't want you to be cold, calculated, callous killers, basically. So brutal. Like the brutality of it all. That's what we don't want. But they cannot separate out the two. They cannot separate the difference between an evil, toxic male and true masculinity. There's no difference to them. To them, to be masculine is to be toxic and brute and coarse and brash and evil. To them, that is a real man. But in reality, masculinity is kind of gentle. Ooh, it's so deep. In reality, masculinity is kind of gentle. Like it's hard to explain. And the reason true masculinity is gentle is because it is strong. So when you know you have strength and you know you have power, you know if you overuse it, you could hurt somebody or something. So you're more gentle with your approach because the thing that you're dealing with is not as strong as you. For example, I know a lot of men that are afraid to hold like newborn babies. Not all of them, not all of them, but a lot of men are scared to hold newborn babies because they are afraid of their own strength. And they are afraid that if they twitch in the wrong direction or if they move too hard or something, they're afraid that they'll hurt the baby because they're scared of their own strength. So they often either won't hold the baby or you have to give it to them real gentle and they'll sit very still. Like they won't do a whole lot of moving around. They'll just sit very, very still with the baby because they don't want to hurt the baby. That would be an example of that gentleness. Now, some men know how to handle newborn babies. They're not afraid, but a lot of men are. But here's another example of gentleness. Like, could you as a man be kind-hearted and gentle towards a kitten? Could you? Could you find a little kitten on the side of the road? And instead of looking at it from this community's perspective and going, ew, cats, I hate cats, I'm not a cat lady. Could you pick that kitten up and put it in your shirt and take it home and give it a little food and then either take it to the shelter or keep it, one or the other? Could you? Like, that's gentle masculinity to me. Could you do that? Or would that's too much like being a cat lady for you? You see what I'm saying? So it's hard to explain. It makes perfect sense in my head. I hope I'm making sense to you guys. Let's take a look at one more article, then we're going to wrap this thing up. Then I'm headed over to the after show, and all channel members, you are invited, and we'll hang out for a little bit, talk about this and whatever else comes up, and then that'll be it for the night. So this was published January 4th, 2023. Study finds that incel traits are linked to paranoia and other psychopathological issues. Okay? This community is attracting men who truly need therapy, y'all. They need therapy. And once we're through with this, I do have some suggestions for what we can do. And that's one of them. They need therapy desperately. Okay. It says the personality traits associated with incels are linked to several psychopathological issues, according to new research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. An incel, or involuntarily celibate, refers to a member of an online subculture of individuals who feel deprived of meaningful companionship and sex. Many of these individuals resent women for rejecting them romantically and sexually. Unfortunately, some individuals within this subculture have even turned to violence. Although many people are quick to condemn incels for their misogynistic views, understanding the complexities behind this growing subculture could help to prevent future harms. I began to study this topic together with my colleague. Our interest regarded the possible psychological explanations of extreme misogyny in the contemporary phenomenon of the incel. The researchers used the online platform Qualtrics to survey a sample of 770 male participants. The survey included an assessment known as the Incel Trait Scale. The participants were shown a list of 20 traits and asked to indicate which described them. The traits included characteristics such as excluded, scorned, unattractive, defeated, hateful, and resentful. Chioka and his colleagues found that those who scored higher on the incel trait scale tended to also score high on measures of paranoia, anxiety, and depression. In addition, the incel traits were associated with a fearful attachment style. In other words, those who scored higher on the scale were more likely to agree with the statement, "I am comfortable without close emotional relationships. It is very important to me to feel independent and self-sufficient. I prefer not to depend on others or have others depend on me." According to Chioka, the findings indicate that incel people struggle with their condition and that they feel women are responsible for that. They are suffering but incapable to change their situation, so they blame others. The violence comes from there, from resentment. Once again, emotional education and psychological counseling should be promoted in schools as preventative programs. Specific psychological and psychopathological traits characterize incels. Paranoid ideation, depression, and insecure relational patterns can be considered predictive factors in the incel personality. The findings are in line with a previous study, which found that incels tend to have reduced psychological well-being and exhibit a greater tendency for interpersonal victimhood. For these reasons, it's very important to pay attention to many social and psychological markers for violent behavior among incel males. Health professional operators and psychologists should be trained to assess eventual deviant incel subjects. Okay, so I will link this for you once the show is over. But I think what we're finding here, we're getting closer and closer to our answer. And I think what we're having and what we're experiencing is a very large number of young men who are psychologically not well. They're not okay. The kids are not okay. And instead of them either being offered the help that they need or finding it on their own, they tend to drift in these massive online gangs, basically, who corrupt their thought process so thoroughly that some of them actually do go out and act out on their beliefs, on what they're being taught, on what they're being exposed to. For example, there was a subway shooting last year, and the guy in some of his posts that he made on YouTube said that he was a huge fan of the Manosphere and Kevin Samuels and all of them. And the biggest problem with them is that they don't teach them how to think logically. They don't teach them, I need to come up with a name for this. I just don't know what that name would be. But for example, this group blames women for their inability to have sex, and they fault women for that, when they don't understand the other half of it, which is a woman doesn't have to have sex with you just because you want her to. It's like they need entitlement deprogramming. That's the best name I can come up for with it now. They have severe entitlement issues, meaning because I want you, you should give it to me. And when the answer is no, it's like, well, now I blame you for all of my life's problems. But she doesn't actually have to give that to you. She has a right to say no. It's like they need entitlement deprogramming and they need rights programming. What are rights? What rights does a human being have? The right to say yes and no, the right to decide what happens to their body, the right to decide who they allow into their life. Those are rights. It's almost like they don't understand human rights. They don't understand human rights. They don't understand entitlement, what it looks like, what it is. They don't understand that just because you want someone or something from someone doesn't mean they have to give it to you. They don't get it. It's like that particular part of their brain is turned completely off. And they need some help with their sexual obsession. Like I've said before on a video, if they ever stop thinking about sex for just 5 minutes, their life would improve. It's like they need another hobby. There's so much more to life than just sex. Like sex is a part of life. It's not the only thing, but their mind is so focused on it. And the men who lead them, like Andrew Tate, aren't helping them focus on other things, aren't helping them understand that when you are yourself and you are self-actualized, people are generally drawn to that in general. You know, people are attracted to whole people. Well, I take that back because people are often attracted to broken people and people who aren't whole. But what I'm trying to say is they wouldn't have as many problems attracting women if they didn't exude all this anger and hate and entitlement and lack of understanding of human rights, basic human rights and basic human dignities. But it kind of helps you understand how so many human rights atrocities have occurred over the years. When you have a group of people who doesn't understand what individual rights a human has, it makes it very easy to take those rights away from them and violate those rights as well. So in closing, you guys, tonight's episode was about the Lost Army, this mass group of clearly troubled, disturbed young men, how they formed, how they've come to be, what traits they seem to have in common, and why they're so easily led by people like Andrew Tate. And we also touched on Andrew Tate's arrest and how he ended up in jail. In terms of how do we fix this, I do think it is a big problem that has a lot of legs on it that will be very, very, very hard to get a grip on. I do think we need to do what I just recommended, which is human rights training, entitlement training, and like refocusing training. Like, yes, sex is a great part of life, but it shouldn't be your defining trait and your defining characteristic. And you shouldn't define your whole identity on whether or not you're getting laid. That shouldn't be the sum total of your identity. That makes you a very boring person, actually. That makes you boring. If that's the only thing that you're offering, that makes you very, very boring. What else are you offering as a human being? But also, I think that these young men, and really everybody, to be honest with you, but I think this particular group of men needs access to free therapy and free counseling, no charge, free, and potentially perhaps by men. So free counseling being offered by male counselors, because they already have issues with women as it is. But some healthy-minded, stable male counselors who are offering free counseling and support to these young men. They need somebody to talk to other than these toxic communities. Because as we were looking at in that one article, they know something is wrong. Because as soon as they go to bring up a diverging idea, they're basically silenced by the same group that they're part of, like a cult. They need rational, logical voices outside of these cults to kind of talk them off the ledge and talk some sense into them. Parents out there, especially those of you who are parents of preteens and teenage young men, you need to be on the lookout for signs of this. Like if you hear the name Andrew Tate come up at the dinner table, that should put you on high alert. And you need to figure out your plan of how you're going to make sure your son doesn't get sucked into this community, because it doesn't have good outcomes for them. It really doesn't. They often get sucked into pyramid schemes and pyramid scams. They're often taken advantage of financially. They'll give all their money to these men instead of investing it in themselves. Be on the lookout for that. It trains them to become angry. It doesn't teach them how not to get angry. It teaches them how to get even. It teaches them how to view women as their opponent versus their partner in life, assuming that they're straight males. It doesn't teach them to view them as partners in life. It teaches them to be opponents to them. And you know what it's like if you meet someone and they're going against you from the day that you met them, that doesn't make you like them more. It makes you like them less. And then when the women like them less, because you're putting the women on the defense, accusing her of things that she either hasn't done yet, or never will do, you're accusing her, criminalizing her before she's even done anything. No, she's not going to like you. And no, she's not going to sleep with you. And then they take that and say, see, women don't like me. Well, yeah, because you accused her of being a whore and a liar and a cheater, and you don't even know this woman. You don't even know her. It teaches them to think in stereotypical ways, and it teaches them to stereotype people, which I'm sure they apply to other areas of life. It basically makes them stupid. Let's just say it. Let's just call a duck a duck. It makes them stupid. It does not make them smarter. It teaches them to think in very short-circuited loops. The fruit loop that we talked about before. It teaches them to think like that. Do I actually have that picture on here? I hope so. Oh, please have that picture on here, PTE. Yeah, I do. Bam. It teaches them to think like this. So the manosphere fruit loop starts off with these women. And then that kind of slides into how they're all sluts and whores. And how those sluts and whores then eventually become single mothers who end up on welfare. And you can slide down and thank feminism, Oprah, and independent women for that. And because of that, they're having abortions in record numbers. And damn it, these women. And this is where they will have your child's mind stuck for life if you're not careful. And it leads to a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety. And a lot of these men end up taking themselves off of planet Earth because they cannot escape this thought process. When there's actually a million other things in life to think about, but this is all they think about all day, every day. Okay? So I want y'all to think about that. I want y'all to pay attention. I want you to be on the lookout. We're going to conclude this installment of Sick and Dangerous Men, The Lost Army. There are other installments of this series. There is a playlist. All of that is linked in the description box for you. I'm going to close. And to my channel members, I will be joining you on the after show in about 10 minutes. So you can look for me there in about 10 minutes. I'll be over there. Everyone else is welcome to join. You just have to be a channel member to join the after show. Check out the mailing list if you want to be notified of all future live streams and things of that nature. And with that, you guys take care. Be blessed. Good luck out there. And we will talk again very, 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 very soon. Okay? Bye.